But the fact that Bob was the host and he doesn't, maybe he didn't use the town account or something. I don't know.
I think it's possible to click on these links but not be logged into your Zoom account when you're. I'm hoping. It's. I think it's possible to click on these hold on. Links but not be logged. There we go. We got to adjust all the emails from Wendy's Hope email address doesn't work anymore.
Has it been hot or what? It has been so hot. Oh my God.
Ridiculous.
We were paving this week. It was 275 to 300 degrees on the hot top. Plus it was like 95 degrees. Those poor guys that were working on that hot top. I mean, it had to have been 150 degrees the whole day for them. I mean, it was amazing. I don't know how they did it, and they did a phenomenal job. So I don't know.
Looking good.
I wonder.
So I didn't get that email via my computer. It actually came through on my phone, which is tied to my email, and I still haven't gotten it on the computer. So I don't know what's up with that.
I just replied all to
Yeah.
The most recent thing I could find. But maybe I should just continuously just keep sending invites out in different ways to everybody that's not here yet. Okay, participants.
How about the one Bob sent out?
Choose from a list and
Almost everybody.
who else isn't here? Bob.
Bob and Wendy.
Bob and Wendy. Oh, right.
And Bill Post.
Was he here? Was Bill there before?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's Bob.
Yeah, I had, you sent something that to me and I clicked on it and brought me back to the old meeting, and so did Dave Barrows.
Yeah, I'm here now.
Here he is. There we
You
go.
guys were both over in the.
Look at that. Allison, you're the hero again.
No, I'm the villain in this case. To be perfect, but
Now, who are we missing now?
All I can forward this to
Wendy.
Bill Post.
Wendy's the only one we're missing. She's probably going to have some computer trouble.
well, let me see if because I know that all of her Hope emails are getting sent back to me. Let me. Because she's not on the select board anymore. I think she said.
But there's Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Well, let's while waiting for Wendy to come back in, let's have a little discussion now. But we have I think 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we actually have a quorum representative for each town. Mike's idea, or Allison's finance committee's idea, and Mike's approved idea of having a one-time bonus for people for their heroic efforts, short-staffed in the last fiscal year, which is true. And it sounds like you're talking about a one-time not to exceed $7,000 net total, correct?
Correct.
Any comments from the other board members? Anybody have any?
makes sense to me, but it seems like a month ago, we were talking about a bonus for the employees because of COVID. Did that ever go through?
No,
Okay.
it didn't.
no, no, that never went through. And this is not related to that. This is really,
No,
I have to
understand
agree.
that.
I think they've done a Herculean effort out there. They've been very short-staffed. We had one person down medically. We had lost one person. I think they're down 3. Is that correct, Mike?
Right. Yep.
And they've worked through it during a busy time of the year. And I think this is the question I heard on the finance committee was, this is related to their Herculean effort and nothing else. Because as the finance committee report also stated, this can't continue because we're going to burn some people up. And I know Mike's been working on that in parallel. So are there any other comments from the board on this suggestion? Did we lose Deborah? Oh, there she is. Sorry, Deborah.
I got a question. You
Yeah.
can hear me.
I can.
My only question is, I just was wondering with, to make sure the finance committee is sure about the money. I find it hard to believe that we're under budget with what went on with Brady, hiring a new manager, plus Dave St. Brent, that we're under on that line. It just makes me nervous to make sure that the money's there.
Good question. And I think, well, Alison, you could probably address that, or finance committee. I think one of the key elements has to be, because I had the same question, Mike, and that is, because when you're terminating a person, it has a big, the benefits thing can be a big differential. And I think I heard one of the line items that was down was the benefits package payments. Is that correct, Allison?
Yeah, so we were about $38,000 short on, not short, but under on projected salaries and wages, and about 72,000 short, or 78,000 maybe on the benefits line. So where we really benefited, so to speak, even though we did, we brought Dave on, for instance, so that got paid out of the wages and salaries section, but we didn't add any additional benefits.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if we're down 3 people, you're not paying benefits to 3 people, and benefits, we all know, are huge. So Mike, I think that's probably, whether it's accurate or not, but if it's even half, the fact of what they did is real. And
it is real. I mean, I was equally skeptical. I've been saying this whole time, there's no way. Look at all of these overruns that we're having in the facility area. So I shared your skepticism and stared thinking, what are we missing? The only thing I ended up finding was that we actually had more on the revenues side. So when the finance committee met, we thought we were about $27,000 ahead. But then when we looked more carefully, we realized that there was $45,000 that had been budgeted to be spent from the unassigned fund balance. And that hadn't been allocated yet. So the other thing that helped us a little bit, aside from the lower wages and benefits, was the higher than expected landfill revenue, and a little bit higher on the MSW too, which somehow didn't correspond to as much of an increase in expenses on the MSW. So there could be a little bit of a lag in terms of some eco-main fees that could come back to us, but it's not going to be enough. I mean, we're $72,000 in the black right now. So even if we had, a $20,000 bill somewhere, we're still really ahead. I hadn't realized how much lower we were trending on the employment stuff.
mm-hmm. Well, $7,000. I'm sorry. Mike, go ahead. Mike, go ahead.
I just said thank you. Yeah, glad to know. Yeah.
Okay, good. So given that, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Here a second?
Second.
Thanks. Discussion. Not hearing, goes a roll call vote. Denise?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm losing my track. David?
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
and Mike,
Yes.
and Bob. Also, yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And
Yes,
we'll, thank you very much. And Mike, thank all the people for the great work they've done for all of us. I think it's very important. Thanks so much. Thank you, Allison. Next item on a regular board meeting is a review and approval of our June 24th, 2020 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or a motion to approve?
I move that the board approve the June 24th, 2020 meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dave. And Kern, discussion? Roll call vote. Denise?
Yes.
Deborah?
I abstained because I wasn't there.
Thank you, Deborah. Mike?
Yes.
Dave Barrows?
Yes.
And Kern, did I hit you, Kern?
Yes.
Okay, and Allison?
Yes.
Yes, and Bob, yes, also. Thank you very much. Approved with one abstention for due to absence. In our packet, there is a very well written, again, a facility manager report. I would like to open up to the board any questions you may have on that facility manager report. And or Mike, if you have any items on it that you think are especially noteworthy to the board, but I saw Deborah's hand first. Deborah?
No, I was just gesturing. I was not
You're not even Italian. Okay, but Mike.
I am Italian, actually.
Yes, I forgot that. You're right. Mike, again, if there's any items in that great report from the board, please ask questions. Mike's here. But otherwise, you have anything you want to highlight in that report?
Well, I guess just briefly on the safety item. COVID, of course, is the top news story to everyone. On July 8th, the governor did issue an executive order requiring face masks for certain establishments. In review of that order, our facility does not fall under those guidelines. While we do encourage face masks, and I can say that most of the public wears face masks, they also, they do social distancing. I just want to make it clear that the facility does not require them. So we do see residents without them. We do have certain employees who do not wear them, but we are an outdoor facility. So we still maintain, as many precautions as we can. So I think that's going well. We don't have any complaints from citizens. So I think we're doing well on the COVID situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to note that we did have a resident who was had an incident, a safety incident, a slip, trip, and fall on. It was actually back in June. It was right after our last meeting. Tripped over one of the steel barriers, the stops for the roll-off containers. He did trip. He actually banged his head on his own car. He was not injured. There was, no evidence of any sort of laceration or anything. We did file a report. We did contact our insurance agency. We also had an injury just this last Saturday at the grinder, the brush grinder. I did not get to include that in the packet here. The grinder operator did fall off of the grinder. He was banged up and bruised, but not injured. He was taken away in an ambulance. They did take him to the hospital. They gave him the scans and x-rays. He is fine. He's back to work. So, again, I don't think there's any workman's comp there, but we do have some training and some safety issues to deal with in that area. And I've actually talked with 2 contractors that handle brush for municipalities. And I have some meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks to talk with these guys. And maybe we can get away from doing brush ourselves. So it's something that I'll be looking at moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
The big ones on the safety, the transfer facility. I guess the real quick note on that, which the board may be surprised to hear, we got our new loader back and we are using our loader. So I thought that was something to highlight. And that's about it. I mean, administratively, we've already covered the finance stuff. So,
Okay,
you know, some little back. So that's it. I mean, unless there's any other questions, I mean, those are the highlights.
okay. Thanks a lot, Mike. That's a great report again. Obviously I was going between our various agenda and went right past our item C, which is look to discuss our proposed Midco solid waste bylaw amendments, of which you have received a red line copy for review. Perhaps, Deborah, you might give us a brief history of what we're looking at in terms of what's been approved and what might be different, if anything.
Yeah,
Check to see if Wendy's in the, I see that we have another person that came
Yeah, I
in.
do. I see an iPhone, Allison, but it's
It'd be
muted.
nice to know who that is.
That's
It's
probably
mine.
me.
Oh, do you have two going?
I did have. I was waiting for my computer to come up.
Oh,
That's
okay.
probably me.
All right.
Oh, okay. That might be causing feedback too, but
I muted that line, so we're.
well, thank you very much, Allison. We have spies. Anyhow, Deborah, would you please?
yeah, you know, ever since we had been, you know, had undertaken this bylaw project, going back to January and February, we, the governance committee had provided the board with basically this draft that had a lot of the cleanup changes in it. You know, "thes" were not capitalized, and, you know, instead of referring to us as the corporation with a capital T, it's a little t, and corporation is the defined term, and a lot of small changes like that. What we did was we had provided to the board all along in January, February, this draft with these small changes in them, but then we focused the board's efforts on the policy discussions. And so in reviewing the January and February approvals that we had done, and then taking out, you know, the red line and all of that for the things that we had approved, and doing a cleaned up version of the bylaws for this meeting, I realized that there's no motion in there that accepted the small cleanup changes that were non-controversial, non-substantive, I think. So I told Bob we really needed to go back to the board to do that. And then there was one additional item, which was something that the finance committee, I think, wanted to bring back to the board anyway on a bylaw change. So I took this opportunity to put this in there. And that was on under the finance committee responsibilities, section 6, article 3, section 6. It says that part of the finance committee responsibilities is to review and recommend to the board of any purchase, lease, or bond in excess of $5,000. And the idea there was, if the finance committee and the board had already approved these budgeted items, even if they were in excess of $5,000, why do we have to have the finance committee looking at those? Why isn't that something that the facility manager just goes out and spends the money that was budgeted by the board? So then we decided that, or then the finance committee decided that it made sense probably to just say any unbudgeted item, that the finance committee could recommend any unbudgeted item of 5,000 or more to the board for consideration. So that would be the only, I think, substantive change in here.
So it's basically qualifying the purchases part, because the unbudgeted is talking about unbudgeted purchases of 5,000 more. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's something that we've struggled with because of the way it's worded. I'm not sure that unbudgeted gets to the heart of it, because part of the reason that's in there, I think, isn't just to protect the corporation from unbudgeted expenses, but to provide a method of sort of transparency to make sure that there's a competitive aspect of some of these bids, but it doesn't, the way that it's worded doesn't necessarily get to the heart of that either. really what we need is a purchasing policy, which we don't have.
Right, we do need that.
So I think it's always going to be a little bit of a fine line and a gray area sometimes whether something should go to the finance committee or not, and that it's hard to put all of that into the bylaws. I'm fine with leaving it at unbudgeted
Yeah.
for now, but I don't think that we actually did discuss this a little bit in the finance committee meeting at the beginning of this week. And, Bill Post was explaining some of the differences that he's seen from town to town. And
Right.
there's no perfect, what we all agreed on was that it's not, the bylaws aren't necessarily the appropriate place for all of that, but.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I would have to agree. None budget isn't perfect. I would have to agree with that, but I have to think that it's better than having nothing in there, because as is written, it suggests that anything a $5,000 bill for anything has to be approved by the board. We'd be meeting on a weekly basis to it if that were left as is.
Right.
And so I agree, but I think you're right, Deborah too, and Allison. We need a purchasing policy to make sure we get the bids. And I agree with that. But I think this might be just an intermediate step to it really what that reinforces in my mind is the facility manager has the responsibility to manage the budget. Period. And that's a starting point. So when you say unbudgeted, that's when Mike has to raise the flag to the committee, finance committee, and say, look, this is not in the budget, and I'm thinking of buying a new whatever the heck, and then he has to get that approval. So I think it's a start.
David St. Laurent had his hand up.
I'm sorry, Dave. I was trying to ignore you.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, you should have something in there that allows for the manager to be able to spend in the case of an emergency. The other stuff, it can be planned, and that's a little easier to deal with, but the manager has to have the latitude to deal with fires, situations where the pump is down, where regulatory issues could arise as a result of not acting immediately. So maybe some language in there that gives that manager the latitude in cases of an emergency that are either safety related, regulatory related, or affect the health and well-being of the community. I think something of that effect will be helpful.
I agree. Emergency is important. We could probably insert unbudgeted and emergency purchases, period, but leases and bonds, they're long-term obligations. That's a whole different ballgame to me.
Yeah, and that was already in here. But
That was already in there. So you could just unbudgeted / emergency purchases in excess of $5,000 or any lease or bond in excess of $5,000. That would cover it all. Allison?
I mean, I think that making emergency purchases go to the finance committee would slow it down in a practical way as well. A lot of the time, emergency spending does fit into one of the existing line items in the budget. So, typically fire stuff has gone under landfill development, or landfill operations, or there's the facility maintenance, which oftentimes covers, emergency holes in the road, things like that. So I think what was slowing it down, what we have seen happen is like, oh gosh, there's a hole in the road that we need to fix really quickly. Can we get a finance committee meeting together to approve this? And usually what the finance committee would say every time is, we'll go ahead and spend out of that appropriate line. And you get to the end of the year and you spent more in facility maintenance than we expected. That's just a fact. But that really it's the purchasing policy that would get into sort of the minutia of when things need to go out to bid, when they don't, when we can have a single source, blah, 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 whether it's construction, engineering, but I think we can talk about improving that, but that for the purposes of today, it's a little bit better as worded now than it is, was before.
So then Deborah, there were two things that weren't ever approved by a board vote. One was the you called it the corrections, annotations of the
Yeah, they're
word.
just non-substantive,
Non-substantive issues.
non-substantive items that have been in this draft since
And,
January.
and the second item would be this item 6B, which is just inserting the word unbudgeted. Everything else has been already discussed and approved by the board in prior meetings.
Right, and yes, but while we're on that sentence on the 5,000, maybe we should just take out lease or bond, just so it's
Yeah, I would agree.
any bond or any board, any unbudgeted purchases in excess of $5,000.
I certainly could live with that. Other opinions?
It's just so bad. It's just so,
And then we just.
there's problems with it, but it's better than,
Yeah, and get that word on budget is really the most important thing we can do. But to address this and to make these changes, we will have to, the bylaws require us to have an advance notice of bylaw changes.
Yes, but before we get to that, is there sort of a consensus that it should be unbudgeted purchases in excess of 5,000, take out lease or bond? Right?
I would do that.
Consensus, if everybody kind of nods their head or.
Could do that.
Yeah, okay. So then if people are okay with the concept of approving these non-substantive, items that have been in here, like I said, since January, they were just the cleanup changes. That would be one thing. And then the second would be this change we just made to section 6. If people are comfortable with that, then we need to have a motion first that would waive the notice, the 5-day notice. Article 10 requires that there be no less than 5 days notice before this meeting of any amendments to the bylaws. And you could argue that there's been lots of notice in the sense that these, everything except this section 6 thing has been in here since January, but there really wasn't notice per se. So I think that if somebody or I could make a motion that we waive the 5-day requirement of notice for amendment to the bylaws. And if somebody were to second that and we agree to that, then the next motion would be on the actual adoption of the amendments.
Okay.
So,
Can I hear a second?
second,
Okay, so motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Denise?
Yes.
Kern?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Yes. Allison?
yes.
And Deborah?
yes.
And Bob, yes, also unanimous. Okay, so we waived there. Now we need a motion to approve this red line version with the clarification on the changes we made to 6B.
So I move that we change Article 3, Section 6, 1B to read as follows. Review and recommend to the board any unbudgeted purchase in excess of $5,000.
I second that.
Deborah, do we need to clarify anything else in terms of the annotations made that we never actually approved?
Oh, sorry. I was going to take that in a second, in a third.
That's
vote.
fine. You can do it that way.
Sorry, I should have said
Oh,
that.
that's fine. That's fine. Discussion. Roll call vote. Denise?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kern?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Bob, yes, unanimous. Thank you. Now to the second motion.
I move
Go ahead, Kern.
that this board approve the proposed Midco Solid Waste Corporation bylaw amendments.
Second,
Discussion. All's in favor, Denise?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kern?
Yes.
Dave Barrows?
Yes.
Allison?
yes.
I saw Wendy.
Wendy's
Wendy, yes, Wendy's back. Yay.
I've been having a terrible time, so I'll have to abstain because I did not get this
That's
discussion.
fine, Wendy. I'm
I'm
sorry.
so sorry. I'm
No,
so
that's
sorry.
not your fault. Not your fault. Thank you very much. And Bob, yes, also. So it's
We still
unanimous.
have we still have 2/3 approval, right? We
Yeah,
have
we
to,
do, easily.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. Not a problem. Okay, let me try to get back to where the heck I was.
okay, thanks. So then, you guys, I'm so buried with work right now. I will, in the next couple of days, get out the clean version of this to everybody, so everybody has
Okay.
updated bylaws.
Okay. The last item on our regular board meeting is this a recommendation by the Strategic and Capital Planning Committee, basically a report with respect to a solid waste disposal contract options. The Strategic Committee had met a few weeks ago, actually, and discussed the input that had been solicited from the various options that are out there for solid waste, and consolidated them and put them in a matrix and analyzed them and came up with certain recommendations. Now this is reflected in let me get to the right page here.
Do you want me to share my
Yeah,
screen?
if you could put up the assumptions page first, Allison, would be great.
Sure, assumptions page.
Yeah,
assumptions.
it was just a typewritten page.
Summary tab.
Oh, the summary page?
Yep. That's basically it. I believe there's no changes in that, right, Mike?
Correct.
That's really it. And basically, these assumptions are what we were dealing with, which is basically evaluate a short and long-term solid waste disposal contract with 4 facilities. As you originally know, they were PERC, MRC, or better known as Fiberite, Crossroads, and EcoMaine. We reviewed all long-term contract bids. We removed contract bids due to the concerns with instability of the current solid waste management market and, of course, the coronavirus pandemic. We took away all those that were affected, options that were affected by either of those. The Strategic Committee, having evaluated, recommending a 3-year contract to support reevaluating new development in the waste management market in the next 2 years, and its reflective cost savings, which we can discuss. There's also a comment here that suggests that EcoMaine did provide options with recycling materials at the facility, also in terms of single stream and sending baled recycling there. Those options, all other disposal options, do not reflect recycling at the facility. So basically the assumptions, that's what the assumptions are. Now, if we can go to there's a, in the packet, there was a very small spreadsheet that showed, and I don't know if it's in this one, Mike, do you know where that spreadsheet is in the packet? It's in the packet under, not sure it's in the bylaws. This bylaws was a separate piece.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. Let me give you the file name.
It was the next tab, Bob.
It was next tab on that?
I believe so. The bottom line.
Yeah, the one that had, it evaluated the current costs for PERC, Crossroads, and EcoMaine.
Right there.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. And Mike, Dave, maybe you can take us through this summary of what was bid, what was blah, 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 of these, well, actually 3. Clearly, there is no evaluation here for MRC/Fiberite anymore due to the situation is a shutdown facility, as you're well aware, and it's under. So, Mike, Dave, you want to take this one?
Okay. I'll take that. The current cost is exactly what it sounds like. And we use that cost. That includes hauling and tipping fee at EcoMaine. And we compared it to rates provided by the 4 institutions. Fiberite being removed from this. We had PERC, and PERC is offering basically the gate rate, so which is $77.88. They will do long-term contracts, but as we discussed, we pulled that out. The next here is Crossroad, which is waste management, bringing material to Fiberite. Crossroads did offer a 3 and a 5-year contract with a fixed CPI, a fixed rate of 4.5% for 3 years and 3% for 5 years. And you can see the numbers there. EcoMaine did offer extensions of our existing contract. A 1-year extension was $87.50 tipping rate. 3-year was down to $85 tipping rate. As Bob mentioned, they also offered changes in our recycling operations. They offered a 3-year with single stream recycling, that's the SS, as well as a 3-year with Midcoast Solid Waste retaining their current recycling operations. Essentially, we would send baled material to that facility, and then EcoMaine would then broker that through, and I believe they used the MRRA to broker that material out. So I factored in all of those, including transportation and the different recycling costs at our facility, and presented those numbers here. I extrapolated those out into year 2, 3, and 5 based on CPIs, average CPIs for various facilities, and then the 4.5% and 3% offered by Crossroads. So I mean, that's the summary of it right there.
And I think it's important to note that on the EcoMaine 1-year, 3-year, in our current contract with EcoMaine, which expires June 30th, 2021, as you probably remember, there is an option for a 1-year extension of that contract. And that's what this 1 year originally, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but EcoMaine came back and said, no, we're not going to continue at the current rate. The current rate is what, 60?
59, 58 and change. So
less than $60. And they said they couldn't continue with that rate. So they, if we wanted to consider invoking that 1-year extension, it jumped it up to 80 something dollars. That's where that piece came from. And of course, 3 years is a new 3-year deal. But and the Crossroads proposals are for an annual increases of CPI fixed at 4.5% for 3-year, fixed at 3% per year for a 5-year, and you can see the escalations of those. And of course, in that first column, you can see the differentials from where we are today is 683,000. The obviously the most expensive options are EcoMaine. PERC is kind of hard, even though it's not that much more. It's gate rate, meaning, correct me if I'm wrong again, Mike and Dave, that means they can charge us whatever they want to charge us at the gate. Next year could go, up $10 a ton, or it could go up $2. We have no way of predicting what the gate rate.
Go away entirely.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Or they could go away entirely too.
Exactly. That's a really uncertain package as the market stands today. And again, it is a very dynamic market. And as you probably saw or recall in the assumptions, one of the things was the strategic committee did look at what's the smartest thing to do now. And you can go around in circles, but bottom line is the industry is in flux. The fiber right thing has thrown a bit of a monkey wrench in, if we're 6 or 8 months ago, we'd probably be sitting here recommending fiber right and MRC. But that's not an option. And that's going to throw some tizzies into this equation. But so this is where these durations and are coming from. These proposals are not, why are we discussing it today, even though our contract doesn't expire until next year? These proposals have a limited duration in terms of effective date. As I recall, they're like 60 or 90 days. Is that correct, Dave or Mike?
The Crossroad quote was 90 days.
Right.
However, I did talk with Peter at Crossroads today.
Yeah.
Those terms are effective June or July 1st of next year. So as soon as our EcoMaine runs out, those terms are effective.
Right. So we would have the advantage of utilizing EcoMaine's lower rate until June 30th, 2021, and then July 1st, 2021, if we were to go with Crossroads or whoever, that would take effect Some, what, 8 months from now?
Yep.
Whatever it is. And it's more than that. It's more like 10 months.
10 months.
Yep. So that's the
So-
data. The recommendation from the strategic committee was looking seriously at the Crossroads 3-year option because it still feels like a window in time in which, you know, the industry may do some shaking out. We don't know. There are bound to be changes in the industry versus a longer term kind of an option, which here even has a lower CPI at 3%. But we wrestled hard about whether we should be doing a short-term, long-term thing. In hindsight, if we had been an EcoMaine with a long-term contract, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about anything, obviously, and probably in pretty good shape. But we didn't, and that's hindsight. But going forward in uncertainty, the strategic committee felt, yeah, this is probably not the time to be planning too far out, given the turbulent industry right now. And that's how we came to that conclusion. Questions? Denise?
Yeah. So there was an issue before about whether we could do something longer than 3 years without going back to the towns.
Correct.
Does that play into this decision-making at all, or?
Well, yeah, it does. Obviously, if I believe, and Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we need to go to vote if we're more than 3 years. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, but you know, Bob, we never,
No, we never did.
We'll check that because the hauling contract
Right. It's
that
3
is
years.
being reviewed is 3 years with
Correct.
the ability to renew.
Correct.
So,
Well, certainly, we know at some point that to answer your question, Denise, I believe there is a restriction at which time we need to go to the voters for a long-term contract, whatever that definition is. If you're in the 3-year time period, as we just did a hauling contract, it's going to be a 3-year time period. We didn't. And if we had to get to a vote kind of thing, honestly, we'd be really pressed because we'd have to have this decision done and ready for warrant next month to go. And I don't think we're there because we want to do it in November to be prepared for, you know, a June transition, a July transition. So yeah, I think it does have an effect, yes. Other question, Allison?
Yeah, I guess just a comment. I'm not a part of the committee, but have been following this for years really closely. And the decision, you know, about what we do with our trash, for me, a lot of it comes down to what the most environmentally responsible thing is to do. And that's not always an easy question to answer. I think before we went with EcoMaine, a large part of that was driven by a desire to be as closely aligned as possible with the Maine state waste hierarchy, which says that incineration and waste to energy is preferable to landfilling. You know, and I definitely conceptually agree with that. When you're looking at our case, I think that it's not as clear because we're in this moment right now where the whole state is shaking up in terms of what is going to happen to the state's waste with the fiber rate situation and PERC being in limbo. There have been some really good op-eds from people that followed this industry really carefully at the state level, and they're basically begging for the legislature to reconvene because they, you know, something has to happen. EcoMaine does not have the capacity for all the waste in the state. They're already at capacity right now. Then we have the landfills, which we don't want to just expand forever and ever. But right now, you know, we could just do the thing where we say, well, we're going to pay a little more and we're going to do what we might consider to be the right thing environmentally and go with EcoMaine because incineration and waste to energy is higher up on the hierarchy. But when you look at like the whole state as a whole, that's not an option for everybody. So what happens every time we send waste down to EcoMaine, we're paying more to get it there, and then we're going to pay more for a tipping fee. And that is going to cause waste from that area to actually be displaced and have to go somewhere else to a landfill. So really, somebody's waste in the state until we fix this overall problem is going to go to a landfill. To me, it doesn't make sense environmentally or otherwise to spend a couple $100,000 more a year to take our waste farther away to EcoMaine so that we can give ourselves the gold star of being a part of EcoMaine, when that just means other waste is going to be landfilled. So I think I appreciate the work the strategic committee did, and I guess I generally agree with it that in this case, a short-term contract is sort of the only way to go, because ultimately, I would hope that we would try to be a part of the larger solution for the state of Maine, and a lot of other towns are going to be in that same situation. So good work, and I would hope that we could go. I would like to go visit Crossroads, but
Yep, and they will allow us to
they
do
do
that.
have, they are a proper landfill. They have methane collection, but I'd like to see that. So.
Okay.
Allison, to speak to that, I talked with Peter today. They're hoping in September to open up limited tours of the facility again.
That's correct.
They are shut down right now. So
That's correct. Other board comments, questions?
I just looked at the interlocal agreement, and while there is a provision in there that says that if we want to enter into contracts of 3 years, more than 3 years, then we have to get the approval of our municipalities. But it appears to be limited to only contracts with other municipalities for processing and handling of their waste, which I had never focused on before. But I'm still not sure that there's not some limitation for the municipalities themselves and so forth.
Well, we did only discuss that part, but I think it comes down to, I think what Allison put very well,
Yeah.
and also the going longer than 3 years. With fiber right now, they're talking about doing stuff there, but correcting it, whatever they're going to do, it's going to take a year or two. Even Crossroads apparently has been taking, I understand, quite a bit of the waste, solid waste from Fiberite MRC all along because they weren't able to handle what their load was anyway. So that's kind of been going on anyway. But I don't think it's if there was some dramatic reason to go long term, we couldn't find it. That's really the bottom line was, and I agree. There's a differential here in dollars, and it does have a tendency focusing on that, but the Crossroads deal is by far to Allison's point, is worth $150,000 more a year to the town, luckily to to whatever advantage we think EcoMaine is going to provide us. The strategic committee didn't see that. Dave, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Basically, I'm disappointed, not at anybody who was doing this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pointing this at it. It's my own personal disappointment that we're talking about a 3-year contract here, because I really had my heart set on getting this tied up for 15, 20 years and get this so that, yeah, I know we're going to have to pay more up front. We're going to have to pay more now. But the thing is, what we're paying more now may be a hell of a deal in 10 years. And I can't see how this is ever going to go down any, no matter what they do to the picture. And the longer you can tie it up, at a reasonable, not much more than a cost of doing business rate per year increase, the longer you can tie it up, the more money, in my opinion, you'd save in the long run.
Yeah, good points. Dave Sandler, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the way Allison explained it was really, she did a really good job. The way you have to look at this is what Dave just said was our objective in the beginning, and we thought we were heading in that direction, but the Fiberite thing fell through, and that was really the only option that kind of allowed for that. I mean, you got to look at three things. You got to look at environmental responsibility, obligation of, serving the community, and, the financial aspect of it. And all three of those things really kind of align more to a kind of the Crossroads model than anything else. Because, within 3 years, they should shake out what's happening with waste for, the most of the state. And then, opportunities will open up, and I think that'll allow for a longer term contract probably to be sought out. And it'll give the board time to plan for that and to put it in front of the voters like we're going to have to. So all these things take time. We're kind of fortunate that we started on this when we did, because it's coming up really quick. And I think that the board and Midcoast Solid Waste is going to be in a good position based on the recommendation of the Strategic Planning Committee in 3 years. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I mean, a lot of thought went into this, and there's no real easy answer. And the point that Allison made, the displacement of the waste, is a good one. Just, so we can say that we're sending it to an incinerator and we're higher up on the hierarchy. And we're going to be trucking it all the way to Southern Maine, and then Southern Maine's going to truck it all the way to Crossroads. So, I mean, we're not really helping anybody in that from that standpoint. So you got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I would agree. Other comments from the board? I guess there's also the element in my mind of in a dynamically changing world. I love the idea of MRC fiberite because it's new technology. And I strongly personally believe that technology will help develop in the next few years to give more, even maybe better environmental options than we had. And part of the problem fiberite MRC had was they were on the bleeding edge of technology, and it killed them. They just couldn't get it to work right. But I believe strongly they had the right approach. They had a technology that they were dealing with. If they could have gotten it to work, we would have been running up there right now ourselves. And I think, and I agree with Dave Barrows too. I was all there for a long-term contract because I felt if we had all done this, 3 years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about, these options right now. That's clear, but that's hindsight. Foresight's not so clear right now. So I was dissuaded myself to say, do the short term, give ourselves some time to see where the market shakes out, and hopefully see the development. I believe strongly there's going to be development of better technologies to handling recycling, because right now it's hurting, in my opinion. We're not recycling everything we separate. We're waiting for the market to change every month for glass or plastics, blah, blah. The longer-term technology is going to develop, in my opinion. Other comments? Allison?
I would just say that the issue now with fiberite is not related to the technology so much as the number one was the delay that was caused by the appeal from PERC. And the second thing was that it took longer for them to get an beneficial reuse permit for one of their pellet products than they thought. And so, and then a loan didn't come through. The technology isn't so much the problem right now. If in terms of a long-term contract, there would be, if I were left to do this all by myself and I were making a decision only for my family or my own personal values, I would probably still try to get a long-term contract with the MRC right now, because I believe in municipalities banding together and working together. The problem with that is that there would be a potential risk that if they don't end up figuring this out and they have to renegotiate all the contracts with all the municipalities, it could result in a tip fee increase, which is what actually happened at the beginning of the PERC contract when this was all getting worked out many years ago. So it could be that if we joined in with the MRC during this very uncertain time, it could really pay off. Because we could lock in with that guaranteed 50% single sort fee, single sort being 50% of the trash and all these things. But whether it would be a risk. And so, but in the long run, all these, these 140 or whatever it is municipalities that are in this situation with this long-term MRC partnership, it's gonna have to work out. The city of Bangor is gonna make sure they're gonna have somewhere to send their trash. They're all gonna work it out. So we could decide to be part of that and get in on a long-term contract and help to shape that by having board members and blah, blah, blah. But it might be wiser from a more conservative standpoint. And this isn't normally the area not normally what I would advocate for, but to just wait and see for a couple of years with
Yeah,
this
and
contract that
clearly,
is much significantly cheaper.
yep, and that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. It's we're at a crossroad. We frankly need to make a decision one way or the other. Like as I said very candidly, the strategic committee reviewed, and there's numerous opinions, but it seemed like this is the smartest, most intelligent strategy right now, given what we do know and what we don't know. And we are faced with a contract expiring in X months. I believe if we were to delay a decision on this, that again, Dave, Mike, you talk to these people. These prices are coming down.
That's right. Especially PERC, a lot of materials getting diverted to them as well. I talked with the facility manager. He says they're losing money. That tipping rate will go up. I mean, they're all going to go up.
So, any other comments?
Are you asking for a decision tonight? Or
I really think you should. I don't think it's going to change over the next month or so. And besides these otherwise we're going to have to go back to the drawing board with these entities and get new proposals because they're Denise.
I just want to clarify so that the reason we think 3 years is the better period of time, not the 5 years, even though that's sort of more economically advantageous. And does part of that have to do with the idea that we may need municipal votes to be allowed to do the 5 years, or is that really not the issue? It's more 3 years is when this industry will have sorted itself out and we might have some good opportunities by that point.
Yeah, I think originally I was under the impression that 3 years was our limit before we had to go to a vote, and that was certainly pressing that. Otherwise, the 5 years is an option. And I don't think we have a clear answer to that, to be honest with you, because there is a 4.5 CPI on the 3 year. 3% is more reasonable. That's why they did that. But to the industry, yeah, you'd have to guess the stuff is going to shake out in that time period. If you went 5, you could. There's always ways to get out of contracts if you wanted to. But if that's what the board feels like, it is a more reasonable CPI. But that's in my opinion, and I don't know other board members. I think 5 years is, if it takes that long for this industry to shake out, it's big trouble.
Okay.
yeah, I couldn't, from like an environmental leadership ethical standpoint, I couldn't commit us to 5 years of a privately owned landfill. But even if it may be it may be the long-term cheapest option, but I just can't stomach it.
Yeah, I get that. Other comments?
Was that 5 year, is the 5 year one? Did you figure in as far as the trucking? How did you come up with the trucking rate on the 5 year? Just because I thought that what's his name was going to give us a better deal if we could sign into a longer contract with the trucking.
Yeah,
the transportation.
Yep, the numbers that are presented there are all in. So it's tipping fee, it's recycling, and it's transportation. It's everything. All of our waste disposal is incorporated in there.
Mm-hmm.
Even on that 5 year one.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Question.
Anyway, I don't know. I know about the delayed decisions. I just don't see the advantage of it right now. I think that we're at a crossroad, literally, and we need to make a decision one way or another. These numbers are not going to change, they're going to go up. You could gamble 3 versus 5, but I think the 3-year time period is probably the most reasonable one for where things are right now. Somebody else raised their hand? Was it Kern?
No.
Nope.
I was gonna just make a comment,
Go ahead, Wendy.
which kind of fits into what I've been hearing as well, but if we did not have the 3-year limit, if you will, before we went back to the towns and so forth, I would be comfortable with a 5-year, because as we had looked forward to a 20, 5 is pretty short. I mean, it's longer, it's 2 years longer than 3, but I think that would have been a comfortable margin to accept, but I think it's too complicated at this point with that being a limitation, not being able to choose the 5-year at this point.
Right.
So I think the numbers would support, and as the strategic committee said, that would be my choice. I would follow along that, because I think it's our best option at the moment.
Right. Well, it really also comes down to the point Allison made, and that's the decision, the thought about, remember we were really gung-ho with the MRC fiber right kind of, more environmentally correct approach to things. And I think if that's still the objective of this entity, then we should be looking at a shorter term versus longer term, because we get locked into a longer term. It's going to be a lot longer till we get to the promised land of doing it better versus sending everything to a landfill for a long time period. I would have to agree. That's the only reason I personally lean towards the shorter time period, because we're not improving our situation environmentally, in my opinion. We're not making it hellishly worse, but we want to keep our options open for the future, and what options may be open for us for single sort and all those other options that we always talk about. Does the board want to make a decision this evening? I think these proposals are on the table. We can certainly not make the decision, but if we do, we're going to be looking at increases no matter what. I think we need to, and I don't think we're going to know anything next month or the month after more than we know today. Allison.
What was the limit that Crossroads told us that price is going to go up after 30 days?
I don't think Dave or Mike, they actually said anything that specifically. We asked, you guys spoke to them, I didn't.
When I talked to Pete, he said, as long as we're in good faith negotiations, that 90 days wasn't, set in stone. I think if they know that we're working with them, they'd give us a little time, but I don't think we're really going to gain anything by doing that. I mean, I would think that, the one contingent thing that, I think would determine whether or not you go with them, if you decide to do that, would be an audit of the facility prior to making that decision. Probably that would just be one thing that I might recommend.
So basically you're saying the decision is subject to an audit?
Yeah, at least,
Oh, you just,
an audit or a tour. I mean, that's just normal practice whenever you
Yes.
enter into some type of agreement. And I don't expect to find anything. But maybe a look at the financials or just a talk with them about that, and a capacity talk, and maybe a quick audit, quick look at, is there any environmental issues happening at that facility at this point in time? I mean, you just never know. And I don't expect, like I said, I mean, I know the people that run that, and they've been doing it for a really long time, and they do a good job. So, but I mean, that's what any place that I've ever worked at, that's one of the things that we check into for, before making a final.
Allison.
yeah, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to vote on it today without, I'd like to go visit the facility and run a check with the DEP and just look for any kind of outstanding thing. For me, it comes down to like being able to explain to the public that I feel good about this environmentally. And if they can't let us do a quick tour, I would like another month to be able to look at it, and even to look over a contract that we could actually sign, because we don't actually have a contract in front of us to vote
Right.
on right now. So,
We don't.
you know, conceptually, this is where I would be heading, but I would not be comfortable.
Okay, I'm not feeling the warm and fuzzy to jump on a motion at the moment. So probably what we should do is, we can do this. They're very happy to have us there. They are limited in the size of the number of people. I did talk to Pete today also, but he called me, and they're limited to the number of people they can take, but that's fine. We can get in some number to do that. We could enter into good faith discussions with them, not necessarily negotiations. Good faith discussions with Crossroads. Too clever use of language here. No offense to our attorneys on the board, but because there's also there's some permutations of those two that may be an interesting discussion to have on them. Those two meaning 3-year, 5-year
Yeah.
options kind of thing. There may be some elements we could play with that. It may flow towards what Wendy said and others said, and let us play with that, and we can bring it back in August. If that's what the board feels, I have no problem doing that. But we need to move with all dispatch. But the idea would be, we're going to move with this, having this active discussion with Crossroads, and do the visit, do a due diligence with whoever we want to do it with, and make some of us warm, fuzzy, and happy to make a recommendation next month.
And determine what the 3-year, what our limitations are in terms of what length of contract we can enter into.
Well, I mean, there's always the idea of, 3 years or 2-year option. Right now we have a 3-year contract with a 1-year option. And
Yeah.
it wasn't worded hellishly well because it walked us into a trap. The 1 year was going to be at the same rate, and they said we only look stupid. So that's why that kind of fell in the crack when they came back, because we asked for 1 year, what would be your price? Our eyeballs started watering. So, you got to be careful of that, but maybe there's a discussion with Crossroads we could have in that kind of a thing too, and maybe give us some sleep insurance regarding the number of years.
Yeah, I mean, the 3-year contract went to voters also. So it's not even clear from our interlocal agreement that we have the power to enter into these long-term contracts at all if it's not with other municipalities. The interlocal agreement says, in order to encourage and facilitate the financing and development of this solid waste facility, including but not limited to resource recovery and deposits of demolition debris, the directors may recommend by majority vote that long-term contracts be entered into by and in between this public waste disposal corporation and other municipalities for the acceptance, processing, salvaging, and disposal of certain waste. Such contracts may be for a term of up to 3 years. If such contracts exceed 3 years, then directors shall obtain the approval of the municipal officers of each of the member municipalities.
Allison, that says with other municipalities.
Yeah.
Right. Well, doesn't
That's
it?
the provision that I was referring to
Correct.
earlier.
Correct.
It says with
Yeah.
other municipalities. It's not saying with respect to third-party vendors.
Right.
Right. And so it's interesting that it explicitly gives us the power to enter into these contracts with other municipalities. So I believe that it's silent on our authority to enter into long-term contracts with anyone else. So the fact that it doesn't mention it, does that mean? I think
Not
it's
necessarily, because I thought that, again, I have to look, but my recollection is that there's a certain limitation on the number of years that we as municipalities can enter into contracts too. And
That's
so I just don't recall that off the top of my head. So we
Yeah.
obviously, we need to, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, and
This
that might be-
refers to municipalities, but it's not the end of the question.
No, it's not. And that's true. We do, Camden does have limitations on contracts that need to be approved and blah, 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 absolutely. But anyway, we can clarify, we can spend some time trying to clarify that, but I think the overriding issue is what makes sense financially, 3-year with options or 3-year alone. And we can certainly have a conversation with Pete and Waste Management and do the visit thing, do our due diligence between now and next month. They agree?
Yep.
I don't see any no's, so that's what we'll do. All right, good. Heady discussion, good one. With that, I believe we've completed the agenda unless I missed anything, because we've been running around between annual meetings and the like, and a call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Go cool. Roll call vote from Denise,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Wendy.
Yes.
We, very good. Kern,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
and Bob. Yes, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Take care all. We'll see you
Bye.
sometime
Bye-bye.
next month. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Night.
All right, let's get us off of YouTube.
Would that be